Dan Abrams, welcome to Second Nature. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
You are the co-founder and president of FlyLow Gear, a brand that is celebrating its 20th anniversary here in 2025. First off, congratulations on lasting 2 decades here. Lutzi, where do you think we should start here? The origin story?
I think the origin story is a great place to start. I have actually here a little bit of a cheat sheet. I've got their book that celebrates their 20 years with a little bit of a timeline and everything like that. And I think actually we should mirror a little bit of that. But I have questions. I want to go deeper into this stuff because anytime you put together a book, which is incredible, and I wish more brands did this, you're obviously sharing a lot of the highlights, but I'm sure the reality is a little bit. I feel like we can go deeper into those stories, but. And I was reading in here that, you went to grad school and kind of came out of grad school all fired up. Is that maybe the right place to start? Or
Sure. Well, first, that book, it it helps that I married a writer, an amazing writer named Megan Michelson, and she actually wrote the first review of FlyLow ever, way back in 2005. She was an editor for Outside Magazine, and then went to skiing and then ESPN, and she's a boss. And when we were coming up with this, ways to think about how to celebrate 20 years, someone was like, "Oh, we should have a book," and I was like, "Love, do you want to write a book?" And she just took it and ran with it. So I have to always acknowledge, talent where there's talent. So, but yeah, so let's see. Grad school. So I graduated college, just to date myself. I'm 48. Graduated college in the year 2000 in Tacoma, Washington. And after that, we had a whole crew. One of the guys was actually from Jackson, Wyoming. And so we all were just like, let's move to a ski town. Well, naturally, we were moving to Jackson, Wyoming, arguably one of the best ski hills in the world, if not, definitely the lower 48. So 14 of us from the University of Puget Sound graduated and moved to descended on Jackson. And we had people at the pet store. We had parking lot, covered. I was a ski instructor and an après-ski bass guitar player. And we still have some of the crew are still there. A lot of them made lives there. But that first year there as a ski bum, it just wasn't enough. I was feeling a little antsy. Like I just didn't, being a ski instructor and a bass player wasn't going to do it. And arguably, fortunately, I didn't discover, the service industry and waiting tables and bartending like I did eventually, because I think I wouldn't have gone on my path. So instead, I blow my knee out after 9 months in Jackson, teaching a lesson, coaching my kids. I was like a race coach on the weekends, and blow my knee out, look at my roommates, decide they're not going to take care of me. So I move home to Denver, and so my mom could take care of me. And that's when I started bartending, coaching water skiing, playing music, doing all the things. And I was like, man, what am I going to do? And I was like, I kind of need a little more time. I kind of need to figure this out. So I applied to grad school. And I had this idea for a company and for FlyLow, but I wasn't quite sure how to do it. So I chose a degree path that was international trade and development. And most of the people there went to work for the UN or for nonprofits, and business-oriented people went to business school, but the business school was just greasy and it was all about networking. And that's not what I was trying to do. I was trying to expand my brain. So I think of school as like brain exercises, and then the functional aspects of actually like international trade, which I wind up using every day, and trying to explain to people the difference between a duty, a quota, a tariff, or the way that that history and sociology and the environment all play into production practices and doing business around the world. It all comes together in what I do through the lens of skiing.
So did you notice a unique opportunity in the skiing outerwear market, or was this simply a way to fund your passion and your hobby of being in the ski community?
I think that there were a couple things there. One is, ignorance is bliss. I didn't, and I remember consciously laying in bed thinking like, am I really going to go against Marmot and Patagonia and the North Face? And now like Marmot isn't even really a factor. So I was okay with it, taking my moderate risks. But also I was fresh out of college. And so I was that demographic of user that was particularly hard on their gear. Maybe what I lacked in skill, our whole group, brought about with, real vigor and gusto. So, we were basically blowing out our pants every year from the beginning of college. So we start college in 96 and we go to Crystal Mountain. And my whole group of friends, which was like the original FlyLow community, we started out not really knowing about backcountry skiing or thinking about it. But at Crystal Mountain, there's kind of this gray area. They have these gates and it's bombed. But when they open the gates, you can go boot pack up the Silver King and you wind up, kind of having this training wheels backcountry access with control work that also services the sickest terrain that you could get to. So all of a sudden we're out there and we're using whatever gear we had showed up with, which for me was my old ski racing apparel. And snowboarding was cool, but there weren't that many people snowboarding. And then I had my business partner, Greg Steen. He had actually fused his back going fat to flat in high school, and his doctor told him he couldn't alpine ski anymore. So he started telemarking, which is just classic example of what you're not supposed to do. But he was really good at it, and he made everybody want to do it. And so our crew, a lot of people started telemark skiing, and I started seeing us burn through pants even faster, because now you could wear your pants out from the inside out with the knee pads rubbing against the inner lining, or you're down low and you're going to bonk your knee on a rock. You're going to scuff your scuff guards down on your ankles a lot more, because there's just so much going on in that beautiful telemark turn.
Free your heel, free your mind, right?
I mean, that's what it was, But then again, telemark became like the first mocked sport in my world, where, just the way we all made fun of CrossFit a few years ago, like people started making fun of telemark, and so we got out of that biz.
I used to live in Aspen, Colorado, and big skier my whole life too. And I remember starting to see bumper stickers that said, "Nobody cares that you telly ski." Nobody cares that you telly. Yeah.
And that's where, you had in Aspen, you had the likes of Nick DeVore and Jake Saxon, two of the greatest people to ever free their heel. Yeah. And eventually Jake Saxon went on the Freeride World Tour telemarking, which was really amazing. So yeah, like we had these ideas for products because we were destroying our pants, and come out of it in the year 2000, and eventually down to Denver in 2001, 2002. And a friend of ours from college, another guy that actually I'd gone to high school with, his mother turned me on to Alibaba.com. And you can all look up Alibaba.com now if you haven't already, but it's an international sourcing site. And I started poking around there and trying to find someone that would make us a pair of pants.
Didn't I see that it was New Zealand, like a company in New Zealand that you started working with? Was that the first one? Did you find them through Alibaba?
Yeah. So along the way, I had started grad school and started working at a restaurant called Hemingway's in South Denver. That is no more. And And I was just gung ho on getting FlyLow going, go to Alibaba, and really that this course that I took that I never skipped courses or skip classes because I'm dyslexic. So the reading did nothing for me. It was all about taking notes. And I actually missed this last class period for professional communication. But the takeaway that was that you are what you create the perception that you are. So this idea that I started going on Alibaba and hacking my way through it and finding companies that said that they made pants, and yeah, they were, maybe a lot of them were fraudulent, or, nowadays I would err people to have some caution there. But I had to learn the lingo. I had to learn to present FlyLow, which was nothing. And so I started making t-shirts and I launched a website, and this is the early 2000s. So there wasn't a lot of e-com. The shipping department was me. The customer service was me. But in order to convince a factory to give me the time of day, I had to create a brand. So step one, create a brand. Step two, convince a factory that you're going to be the next North Face and that they should use their sample room to make you a sample. Once you get a sample, go sell that sample, and and then come up with the cash to make your first production run, which for me was from bartending. Turned out, if you show up to work on time and you have your head screwed on pretty straight, you can accelerate in the service industry pretty darn fast. So I went from no experience busboy to bar manager at Hemingway's in 2 years, where I was controlling the money, making a good amount of money and not declaring much. And then it was also fortuitous at that time because not only was the ski industry and snowboard industry going through this metamorphosis of the ideal. Like the ideal skier used to be like a ski racer, and then it was a mogul skier, and then in the late 90s it was a powder skier, but the only way to get there was like these visions of helicopters, which didn't make wasn't reasonable for the normal person. So when backcountry skiing started coming around, it was a real fun time. So there was a real need. Telly was actually the best way to do it because the gear was better. And then eventually the marker Duke binding, tech bindings came out. Telemark goes away, becomes your novelty sport, which is awesome, and it's still there. But we were just at the right time, my whole group of friends going out the gates and discovering this stuff, and we realized we needed better gear. So I went out and made it.
The marker Duke binding, man. That's an OG BPC right there. Legendary innovation.
When you're going into ski shops and talking to people like I was, and they're like, what the hell is backcountry freeride? It was a real uphill battle. And then all of a sudden the Duke binding comes out, 16 DIN, frame binding. It allows you to go inbounds, out of bounds. All of a sudden my market was defined, and my market doubled because all of the mountaineering stores that used to sell camping gear, and they'd sell tele gear and the best clothing. Like that's where you'd go, because back then finding a 3-layer, waterproof jacket, 10K was the premier. To find a 3-layer garment, you had to go to a mountaineering store. But if you wanted to get an actual good heavy ski with a good binding and a good tune, you'd go to an alpine ski shop. And all of a sudden the Duke binding was in both. And we were rolling. If you sell the Duke, you should sell a chemical pant.
It seems like a lot of the development that you've had along this way has been sort of servicing your own needs and the needs of the community around you. But I mean, this stuff, having that much inventory to sell and to create, had to be crazy expensive to be able to fund the development of it, fund the inventory of it. Were you self-funding this all on working in the service industry, or how did you think about getting enough funds to actually have this much inventory to be able to support I'm assuming was a pretty big boom in terms of demand?
Yeah, the timing of it was fortuitous. It was before the financial crisis. Subprime mortgages. They gave me. I was able to buy a house in 2004, and I declared $18,000. Granted, it was like one of my first girl. Yeah, yeah, and like it
Wow.
was like one of my friends' moms was the mortgage broker, and she's like, "How much did you declare?" She's like, no, write that up to 80 grand. You're fine. My dad did, like I didn't even have to have, my father or my mother co-sign on the loan. That's the Wild West that it was in 2004 and the access to capital. So fortunately, our first product tester, Eben Mond, who, like is a dear friend, he pushed me to, to buy that house. But that just kind of opened my eyes to this, like to see how easy it was to get money. So when I needed money for this, the credit card companies were sending you checks every month, maybe twice a month. They were convenience checks. And if you looked at the fine print, they would give you 0% for 9 months, 2.9% for the life of the loan, and the transaction fee. So that's not too different than what it is now. But the difference was the transaction fee had a cap, and they would say $300, or it would be 3% transaction fee with a max of $175. And that max of $175 is the key. So I called up Chase Manhattan because my family all flew United in and out of Denver to go back and visit my extended family in Boston. And I got a United Chase card. And I said, can I get a larger line? They're like, sure, let's just give you another one. They gave me two $60,000 lines of credit on credit cards with convenience checks. And I then bounced those convenience checks back and forth for years until eventually the company, like matured. And as we got our third business partner, who's Scott Pearson, who's still at the company and is the CFO, he said I couldn't pay it off. He was like 2.9% for the life of the loan. Like no one gets that. And so we held that $60,000 debt for 15 years until we slipped and forgot to pay a month, and they finally reset the interest rate to what it was supposed to be, 22%, and then we paid it off. But it was a different time. I think there were other things that helped us too, as opposed to this day and age where you're not going to have access to that capital, easy capital with no strings attached. And, mind you, I was willing to take that risk. And if it all went south, I figured, well, I'm not going to go to jail because I didn't do anything illegal. I just, I realized like making bad business decisions doesn't necessarily mean you're going to jail if something goes south. It just means that, you're going to have shitty credit. It's going to be real hard to get out of that hole. But I was willing to bartend for another 5 years to pay off that 120 grand if I needed to. And again, ignorance is bliss or whatever. I was just willing to do that. And maybe that's part of the DNA of an entrepreneur, that I am willing to do that I can't go to sleep at night unless I've thought about option A, B, and C in terms of how I'm going to, cover anything in life. So I was willing to take that leap.
You've mentioned your business partners a couple of times here. Tell us a little bit about either of them or both of them, I guess, and, in what ways you guys fit together as a unit.
Yeah. So first is Greg Steen, who's like a brother, and, we were in the same dorm in college freshman year. And we were part of, we're part of this whole group of friends. And there were really like 5 of us that I think about as like, the different personalities that were the FlyLow community. There was like the tall one, the geologist, the short one, I'm the bald one, and Greg was the freewheeling telemarker from Evergreen, California or Colorado. That was a ripping mogul skier, and like, there were 2 things that Greg and I never agreed on. One was, was moguls, and another was Led Zeppelin versus Rolling Stones. Like, he's all Led Zeppelin, I'm all Rolling Stones. And so we were definitely like a yin and yang. He's a super particular person that that when I started making this stuff and getting ideas from him, and there wasn't that much going on, and eventually I needed help, and he was working in Jackson, and I said, hey, like, do you want to come down and do this for real? So 3 years into it, he moved from Jackson with his girlfriend at the time and moved to Golden, Colorado, and really helped get FlyLow off the ground. And we agreed we would make the same amount of money. So that was nothing for about 5 years. He was waiting tables. He was really good at selling nice bottles of wine, working that hipster angle. And then I was a chop shop bartender that could move fast. Two different ways to make money. So, and then along the way, he wound up taking advantage of subprime mortgages as well. Bless his heart. And we never defaulted, for the record. We were the good ones. But he bought a house 2 doors down from me in South Denver. So Greg lived down the street from me. We had all the inventory in my basement. And one day, this guy, big brother age status, comes over. His wife, he had asked his wife for a pair of FlyLow Magnum pants for Christmas. And then they were the wrong size, and he looked at our website and saw that he lived in South Denver, we lived in South Denver, the company was based there. So he just asked if he could come by and exchange at my house. So he came to my house. We started bullshitting for 45 minutes, an hour, and eventually he asked if I needed help. He was a CPA that had just gotten out of the real estate industry because, like, the real estate bubble had burst. And he was looking for something else, like, to do that would give him flexibility so he could manage his daughters, and his wife, like, has an amazing career and job. And so that allowed him to make a shift. And Scott Pearson, just walked through my door, and he's been my business partner ever since.
Amazing.
I want to go back to that rough 5 years of going from launching the business to actually drawing your first actual check, and just hear a little bit more about sort of like where you were at mentally during that era of, the questions you were asking yourself. Did you feel like, I don't know if this is going to work at, like throughout the whole point, or, oh, this is a fun side project. At least we have like some income coming in. Like, how are you kind of thinking about this progression? Or did it just feel obvious, like, hey, if we just keep doing this long enough, it's going to work? Like, where were you on that spectrum of, I don't know, despair and hope in that first 5 years? What was that like for you? Because now it's obvious, like, yeah, cool, it worked. But 5 years is a long time to go without drawing a paycheck for something that you're obviously putting a lot of resources into and working super hard to get going.
Yeah. It was up and down. It was up and down, especially at first before Greg moved down, trying to find a factory that would actually make a sample for us, which, like, I kind of go on tangents, so you have to excuse me. You had mentioned, I was on Alibaba. I found a factory in Taiwan that made Orvis fly fishing waders, and then this company, Cactus Climbing, that's still in business. And if anybody goes to New Zealand, you should go and buy some cactus climbing equipment because they make amazing stuff. But they spoke English, which was really helpful. And we did a collab, and that was our first pair of pants. So I got those first 100 pairs of pants from them. I learned all about the expense of import duties, because importing product that doesn't pass rainwear, so if it's not waterproof enough, your import duty is exorbitant. Back then it was like 32 to 38%, versus a waterproof garment is 7%. And just to bring it into the modern context, that means those existing duties didn't go away. So that 7% or 32% on non-waterproof stuff is there. And then you add in the first round of Trump tariffs from 2016, which the Biden administration did not take away. That was 25%. plus the other 20% they just added on. Like, you guys got to understand, like, we're paying so much in import duty that yeah, prices are going up. But back to, how you do that, I initially thought the company was going to happen. And if I could just not lose money, if I could sell enough product to cover the cost, then I could just walk away, take my resume, and go work for Patagonia. That's what I always thought. I was like, it's just like you were saying at the beginning of this conversation, like, how do people get in the outdoor industry? Well, like, I didn't know, and I didn't really want to go work retail because I made so much money bartending. And when I was bartending, there were cool people around, there were pretty girls, there was, free booze, free food. I'm in my 20s. My shift didn't start till 4:30, so I could ski every day. And I started skiing at Loveland and Arapahoe Basin, whereas I grew up skiing further into the Rockies. So the FlyLow component of it, it was a hobby. And, I think when I realized that, another friend of ours from college, Cass McTeague, who, bless his heart, speaks the truth at times, and it was hard for me to hear. Like, he pissed me off real bad when he told me that it was a hobby. But he was right. And, if nothing else, it drove me a little bit further to prove him and my father that I could make this thing work. But yeah, I saw the little successes. I saw when I got the product in, I saw that the product was great. I saw that it was different and people were interested in it, and all those little successes kept me going. And then every February, it would be time to put a deposit down for the next production run. And I always describe it as being on a diving board. You're on a diving board. You've now paid off your debt. I got a little bit of money in the bank, and I could walk away from this thing without any debt. Like, I knew enough to know that, like, starting a business a lot of times doesn't work out, and you're lucky if you can get out of it without losing money, let alone breaking even, let alone making money. And it's still up in the air as to whether, my money that I've made off of FlyLow has come from finally getting a salary and then squirreling away money as much as I can, living the balanced life that, that's important to me.
So, Dan, one thing that is coming across to me is that it doesn't seem like there was ever sort of like an end goal in mind with this. It seemed like, all right, let's build this thing. And now I think one of the things that makes you and FlyLow interesting is that, you're still an independent company 20 years later. How has your thinking evolved around just sort of like having a goal or not having a goal whatsoever? Or how is operating a business different when you're not optimizing to sell it in a few years, if you know what I mean?
Well, I did have a goal. But the goal wasn't to sell it and make a shitload of money. The goal was to leave a ski town where I didn't feel fulfilled as a ski bum and create a life that I could bring back to a ski town so I could be a ski professional. And that, as I've always said, like, I left Jackson and I was trying to create a life, find a girl, and move back to a ski town so that I could be a ski professional. And, and maybe that's just it. I set the bar low enough that I was able to do it. It took 8 years to get back to a ski town, and it took having a business partner and Greg that had the exact same goal. Like, the goal was for both of us was like, okay, let's start this business and let's move back to a ski town. It was not to stay in Denver. As great as Denver is, and now I've lived in multiple cities and I love Denver and I could live there. But that was what we set ourselves up to do. So then I meet the girl, the company's rolling, but not necessarily, I'm not getting a paycheck. And my now wife got offered a job in Seattle working for ESPN. And so I was like, okay, this is my chance, that pivotal time in your early 30s where you're going to like choose love or to, make a life choice that may not be the best business decision. But for FlyLow being so organic as we are, or unplanned, however you want to say it, I start thinking do what I always do, which is go for an exercise mid-morning, kind of before lunch. And, back then it was running around Wash Park, and you start thinking about well, if I move up there, could I still work with Greg and Scott while living in Seattle, and what's the benefits? And, what got us where we were at that point, after 5 years, was grassroots marketing, was tagging along to any ski movie we could and giving away t-shirts outside the movie theater, or tagging along with the Tough Guy Productions and the Powder Whores, who were making telemark ski films initially before they made backcountry ski films. I went to demos. I was giving t-shirts out to any girl telemarker. And, it was grassroots marketing. And Denver and the Front Range is an amazing place. It's the heart of the ski industry in the United States, is what I would argue. I mean, I think it starts in New England, and there's definitely a big heart there. But then, that's where everybody likes to go to get their nice, cold groomer skiing, is Colorado. So it was a great place for us to start. But the prospect of growing the brand in a different region with no money meant if I lived in Seattle, I could grassroots market there. So I that's what I told Greg. I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if we were big in the Pacific Northwest? But how could we afford that? It would cost like $40,000 a year. I was just making it up. I was like, but if someone lived there, then I think we could really blow it up there. And Greg's like, yeah, I see that. I was like, cool, I'm moving. And so, and that weighed on me, that Greg had left Jackson to come to Denver. And then I was following a girl to Seattle. So we established this is 2 years, and Megan and I had that understanding, and Greg and I had that understanding that we were moving. I was moving up there to follow Megan and to get FlyLow going in the Northwest, and then we were going to move to a ski town. And we spent the next 2 years kind of planning that out. Where were we going to move? Was it Aspen, Jackson, Tahoe? Those were our 3 places. And we wound up choosing Tahoe, and it's been a good ride. And, I don't think Greg holds it against me too much that he moved to Denver. It enabled him to buy a house with a subprime mortgage, and that was good for credit and all those things. It's good to get stuff off the ground there.
You've mentioned community quite a few times through our discussion, and I'd love to hear you speak about how you really think about building community, and maybe what are the things that people are missing or should be paying attention to. From just listening to you, I think just showing up is such a big part of it, but there's got to be more to it, right?
Yeah, I think we've always been a reflection of our community, and I think that our community has just grown as the internet and the information age has taken over, and we realized that more and more people wanted our stuff. But from the original ideas and the original ethos was that, and another friend from college, BJ Hansen, that built our first website, he made this little marketing ad, this little digital ad that said, "We made it to use it." And I didn't come up with that. It was him, interpreting what Greg and I were doing and what we all wanted. That we were looking to BJ and this whole group as to what they wanted, and actually to this day, sometimes some of our buddies will show up wearing, a new such and such jacket from another brand. And then, either maybe it takes me a year to make it, maybe we have that product and then it just in the mail, a FlyLow product will show up so that it's just here you go, have that hooded micro puff. You don't need to wear that. You can wear this one. So we were always conscious of that. And we were always conscious that, Greg's style is different than my style, is different than Braden's and this and that. So eventually, as we started to get into stores, again, we didn't know that this was the idea, but we were prescribing to what was explained to me is the wholesale marketing method. So if you build your company to be able to survive at a wholesale margin, the best marketing you can get is word of mouth. And the second best is someone going into a store and having a shop kid, if they can just remember one thing about the brand. Oh, these two ski bums from Washington started it. Or, oh, FlyLow, it's an independent brand. You should check them out. They have some stuff. And then all of a sudden people can try it on. They can feel it. And maybe they'll buy it. But regardless, that's a much better impression than a magazine ad or a digital ad that's following you and so forth. So we started really prescribing to this wholesale, independent wholesale method, and we still do. And eventually we got a sales manager, and he's another like big brother figure like Scott, a couple years older than I am, named Micah Hinton. And Micah was like, okay, you guys have designed a new line, and we're going to do something different this year. Rather than you guys just making what you think your group of friends and you want, we're trying to sell to retailers. We should go talk to the retailers. So we started flying to it, like in March every year. Greg and Micah and I would kind of make a ski trip of it, and you'd fly to Seattle. You'd try to talk to the dealers up there. We'd fly to Denver. We'd fly to Salt Lake. And then we'd come back to Tahoe and we'd finalize the line. And we got so connected with the community and what the buyers want. And the buyers are, we all know, like, we're in the industry. So we all just want to wear black top to bottom or whatever, but what the community needs. Like the idea of making an insulated Baker bib was so foreign to Greg and I that we never would have done it. But then we start realizing, like, not everybody actually is going to go out the gates and go boot pack or go for a pure tour. And also, not everybody lives in Tahoe where having a snowmobile to go backcountry skiing isn't that important. But like, if you live in Idaho, you probably are going to have a snowmobile if you're a backcountry skier. And an insulated Baker bib is actually a pretty good idea, especially when you're learning to snowmobile. So yeah, I think that's just it. It's all about community. It's being accessible. And I think that also plays to, how small the brand is, that there's 20 people that work at FlyLow versus these are competitors that, that don't actually make a living off of snow outerwear, waterproof garments. Patagonia sells tons of puffy coats and beautiful, lifestyle apparel, and the North Face makes shoes and, running stuff and gym clothes. But for us, we are hyper focused on waterproof breathables, and that's what we do.
So cool. And it's interesting to hear you say that becoming or being known as the independent brand ended up becoming part of the value proposition and how you wanted to exist in the mind of the customer, which I think allows you to resist the temptation of quote unquote selling out, right? But I have to imagine that there has been a couple of moments, like fork in the road decisions that need to be made about, like, well, are we in this for 20 years? Like, do we want to build this for, in your case now, do we want to be here another 10, another 20 years? At the same time, we've built this great thing that would be very valuable to somebody else. Have there been those fork in the road moments where you're like, have to consider an acquisition proposition or what the path forward looks like and the trade-offs of being independent and staying loyal to that mission versus capitalizing on what you've built?
Yeah. The corporate or the boardroom speak, would be that as a president of FlyLow, I have a fiduciary duty to explore all acquisition or investment opportunities for the brand, for the group of investors. And our structure is independent. We have a group of angel investors that that own under 35% of the company, and And that still makes you, like legally, that's the thing is like, again, just like going back to, what happens if you can't pay your debt to Chase Manhattan, you go bankrupt, you don't necessarily go to jail unless you did something illegal. So I'm trying to do the best thing for those guys. And along the way, I would say we had people interested in acquiring us anywhere from every 12 months to every 6 months, until the pandemic really set in and the interest rates on like CDs and savings accounts, like went so high that people weren't really interested in buying, which was great because it meant less work for me. I didn't have as many people trying to buy our company. But and there was a fork of the road. The biggest fork in the road was April of 2019 when Greg decided that he would like to move on from the company, that it was just never his dream to run a clothing company like FlyLow, and that we've had a good run at 12 years, and it broke his heart. And, and granted, like we're brothers and, and we butted heads on certain things, but 95% of the time we agreed on things. And so he left the company in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. Which was interesting. So yeah, I think that for me, life happened and life evolved and everything happened kind of in the way maybe I had hoped. That, like, to me, I love running FlyLow. I love that the line grows, it shrinks. Twice a year we get to come up with a new line, whether it's for spring or for winter. And then I had kids, and so the idea of being away from my family to start a new brand wasn't super attractive. And I don't think I'm like that cliche serial entrepreneur. I honestly always just wanted to, like live life on my own terms, be able to ski a couple hours every day or mountain bike every day, and get my work done and have this balance where I cook eggs for the kids in the morning and I can cook dinner at night. And I don't mind punching in and working my bartending hours. But instead of pouring drinks, I am shooting emails from 8 to midnight, and that's fine. Not every night, but like a couple nights a week, I will fire it up, because if you want to go skiing the next day, like you got to get your shit done. And I think that ethos, like should resonate through everybody at FlyLow. And again, like that's not something I consciously came up with or that Greg and I thought about, but then we have these other amazing, talented people that come to work for us. And like my buddy Judd Salvas, that was our graphic designer for years and became our director of marketing. He was the one that said, "Oh, independent, homegrown, mountain raised." And then this guy, Jeff Wagaman, who runs our direct to consumer marketing and our website, he's the one that, identified that the common thread amongst the FlyLow community, whether it involves Greg, me, Scott, the people at the company, and the people that he interviewed that were customers of ours before he came on board, was that we all, like aspire to live a life on our own terms in the mountains. And whether you like live in Boston and you're skiing on the weekends or midweek, like the emphasis wasn't on nice car, fucking, 5-bedroom in Aspen and fur collars. It was on, like having a fulfilled life, being good, doing good, having security, being able to go skiing on a powder day. Like 95% of the people that were interviewed in that meeting, or now I've said 95 twice, but a lot, they all said like they can take a powder day clause. They can take a sick day. They can go ski on a powder day midweek for a couple hours. Their emphasis was on being secure enough to be able to go on a ski trip, but not a heli ski trip. But, like we should all prioritize a trip to Verbier, like at least once, if not like every 5 years. Taking my kids to Japan this year, it's going to be sick.
That's incredible. Like this gives me so much context too of some of the decisions that are made because, you had kids and now there's a FlyLow kids line. You probably got super into mountain biking and there's like a really awesome mountain bike line as well. I want to hear more selfishly about how that spring summer collection came about. Where did that start of, hey, we make all these ripping, winter products, but like, what if we had a spring summer line?
Well, I think part of it was a business decision. FlyLow in 2015 had been around now for 10 years and was making pretty good money. We had SBA loans and, we were just scratching by because we were growing our compound annual growth rate, CAGR was 27%. On any 5-year period. So we're a fast growing company at that time. We were profitable. Although, and the profits weren't enough to cover the costs of growth. So we were taking those loans, but still from January or, like December through May, June, we had cash in the bank. And so when you start thinking about it from a restaurant standpoint, we needed to get a second turn on those seats. We needed to get a set, and so we had cash that we wanted to get a second turn on, and that created an opportunity for us to have a spring summer line that would also keep us in the stores for 12 months a year. Because in the summertime, FlyLow would just go away from the shelves. So now the idea of, what's this mountain? We tried to avoid mountain lifestyle apparel. One of my coworkers, that guy that runs our website, said if I said mountain lifestyle one more time, he was going to punch me. Fortunately, that was over the phone. But I got where he was coming to. It was like, it's such a cliche. But it is what it is. So we were trying to figure out, like Greg and the sales manager and Jeff and me were like, okay, what is this FlyLow summer line going to be? Which to me, living in Tahoe City, like I didn't realize when I moved here for the winter. Another cliche, I moved here for the winter and you stay for the summer. Like that I had 150 miles of single track mountain bike from my house. Like I didn't even move here for that. And Greg wound up, we always joke about, Greg would point out that we had a lot of Forrest Gump moments, whether just like starting a backcountry freeride company when backcountry skiing was about to blow up, or being able to borrow money before the financial crisis and the credit crunch. He buys a house on West Donner Lake, a little A-frame, and then that winter some dudes show up and set a skin track from his backyard. So like he just bought a backcountry, like access hut basically in West Donner Lake. So yeah, I don't actually know where I was going with that. I got too excited talking about real estate. Oh, the summer line. So yeah, we had a limited collection and it was supposed to be a reflection of Greg and me. And that brings up some interesting, like tough points in our relationship and in the company. But we started out with this product called the Hot Tub Short. And the Hot Tub Short is this do-everything chemical pant Baker bib of summer, where it was a quick drying hybrid short that was technical without looking technical, had mesh line pockets so it would drain. So it's like, what do you need for summer? 2 hot tubs, because you're going to jump in the lake or the river and it's going to be wet, so you got to dry that one out, and then you can grab the other pair to get back to life. And then by the time you jump in the river again, your first pair is dry. But you can mountain bike in them, you can run in them, you can go to the gym, you can, like they're walk shorts. And to this day, like the Hot Tub Short is our number one selling bottom in the line. It's this amazing mountain hybrid short versus like the surf brands, which now, at that point we'd been in California long enough that like you see these surf brands, Ruka and Hurley, and Volcom, they all make amazing stuff, but it's all so beach focused. So ours was burlier, so that you could actually, just like with all FlyLow stuff, that it would last longer. And then the first shirt was called the Anderson shirt, which is actually the number one selling product in the entire product line year round. It is this pearl snap up, stretchy shirt that, again, is technical without looking technical. You don't need to put mesh vents on it like some other brands to go mountain biking in it, because the fabric is so breathable. It dries fast. And the product line kind of started there. And that first year we saw what sold. Because we also had some hipster stuff, pocket tees, pants. And Greg and I had this hard conversation. I remember it vividly, because we realized that in the wintertime, our style was similar enough that designing FlyLow for the two of us made sense. But in the summertime, my style, I could be self-deprecating. As Greg says, it's the same style I've had since I was a sophomore in high school. I'm not afraid to wear khakis and a t-shirt. And, and his style had evolved into real, hipster mining for some cool Western shirt in a thrift store. And he wasn't into mountain biking. And so it had to be this departure that Dan's mountain lifestyle style was better for the FlyLow collection in the summertime than Greg's style from a sales standpoint. And we wrapped our heads around it, kind of, swallowed the pill and charged forward and started really making purpose-built mountain bike apparel. We also made, Greg's always been a trail runner. There's one of my favorite stories is running into him with our other buddy Seth from the original group of college friends who lives in Tahoe now too. And Seth and I are at the top of Scott Peak, which is Alpine Meadows, in the summertime. And we look over and we see this long flowing hair, no shirt, runner just running up in corduroy shorts and no socks. And it's that's Greg Steen. So eventually we got, Greg designs beautiful trail running stuff, and, and the line has grown. So yeah, that's where we're at, where everything in the line can go for a ride, which my sales manager hates, because he thinks just hang it. The store buyers will buy what they want to buy. But from a website standpoint, from a brand standpoint, you have to be able to associate these activities with these products, especially when the products don't necessarily look like your traditional mountain bike shirt. It doesn't say 100% down the sleeve, it just has a little discreet FlyLow logo, and then, you can use it for everything, which has worked. It's served us really well.
Yeah, I had an immediate reaction when I first saw that line of whoa, this is actually the stuff that I would honestly wear. They actually thought about this. This is made by riders, actual mountain bike riders. Yeah,
I am awfully particular.
Well, it certainly shows.
Much to our production department's dismay at times.
Dan, this has been so fun. Lucy, I feel like we should start making our way towards BPC so that we don't take Dan's entire day. But I would love to know just sort of how you're feeling about this now. You're 20 years deep into the game. It sounds like you're as inspired and motivated as ever. What does the future of FlyLow look like to you in the mind of the founder?
Well, more than inspired, I'm empowered. I'm empowered by the success that the business has had and the reception of the community. And even though we're in a tough business scenario right now, as all consumer brands that rely on international trade and prescribe to capitalism and the idea of cooperation being the best scenario, I know that I have a good feeling that FlyLow is going to make it through it. I don't know. And I'm empowered because I get to make anything I want. I can make a fleece snap up, which is the new Irwin, which I love. And I can make kids stuff for my kids. And then when I realized that, what sells really well in kids apparel is insulated, but I live in California and I don't need insulated, I can make shells for my kids. And stuff comes and goes. and evolves. And that's the key to the brand, is the evolution of the product. So I'm looking to the next generation and what they need and how we can, modify our product to, to conquer the needs of the next skier and snowboarder.
I've got to imagine, I mean, you're established. You've been around for 2 decades and have been doing it. You've got to have a lot of people approaching you, asking you for advice, and maybe they want to have their own outdoor brand or some sort of thing. What's the advice that you're giving out to people that are kind of trying to make this thing happen?
I mean, I love it. In the end, I love business and I love helping people with businesses. And, and when I was actually on my honeymoon, we went to Portillo, Chile, and we meet this family that's sitting next to us. And I talk to this dad of 2 twins that are basically, 12 like my kids are. And I, eventually this guy, Tom, is so interesting. And I'm like, Tom, what do you do? And he's like, Dan, I invest my own money. And I went back to our room and I was like, Megan, I know what I want to do when I grow up. And so I have gotten involved, and I'm, by no means investing large amounts of money. And sometimes I just invest my time, but I'm open and approachable to all business ideas. And I talk to so many different businesses, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved. I think when I got when I needed money and the banks wouldn't give it to me, and I tapped out my friends and family loans, and these angel investors, got involved with FlyLow, I realized that if things go well, it's kind of like being Ferris Bueller, with the keys to the Ferrari. Like, these guys are looking to put money to work, so I could be involved in that process. And that's what's happened. A lot of times I've been brought in to talk to younger entrepreneurs and be that liaison between the old guard and the young guard. And consistently, my recommendation, to get back to your question, is slow down, be patient, breathe, exercise every day, work your shit out, and don't do it, don't do it the bad way. Don't feel guilty about going for a run or going mountain biking. That's when you get the real work done. So get up, get the company rolling in the morning, and get your exercise. And if I lived in Denver and I was working with our operations crew, I would do just that. I would roll in the morning, and at 11 a.m. I'd be out to go for a run, or there it'd be a road bike ride, which I'd rather go mountain biking any day. And but I see these people, these entrepreneurs, and it resonates with me because I was them, where my head wouldn't stop thinking about it. And I almost lost my best friend because I wouldn't stop talking about FlyLow for years. And so to go back to the beginning of this story, what's the, how do you get a business like mine off the ground? Either you establish yourself and then you take a risk in your 30s and 40s when you know how to make a business plan and get money from people to do it. And maybe that's the right way to do it. But for me, I didn't know how to do that. And I actually like my path because I liked being available at 37 when I had a kid. Bartending forced me to stop FlyLowing because at 5 p.m. I had to punch in. And my boss, who actually now works at FlyLow, Anne Marie, she would tell me, put your phone away, Dan. You're not this is not FlyLow time. And so again, kind of like going for a run or a mountain bike ride, it allowed me to step out of that lens and, work a different, a different angle, but you're still always thinking about it. So I tell people to slow down. There's more stuff than you think you need to do than you actually need to do. Just do one thing at a time and slowly build it.
Your boss from the bar now works at FlyLow?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Anne Marie,
story.
she managed the restaurant, and she did that for a long time and was an excellent wine buyer. And then eventually she wanted to slow stuff down, and she's like, dude, give me a job. I was like, are you sure you want to go work? She's my age. And I'm like, you sure you want to go work at FlyLow, like packing boxes with a bunch of, like bearded hippie dudes? And she's like, I love 20 something hippie dudes. And basically her husband, Dave, is, like a bearded hippie dude. So yeah, it all worked out. Anne Marie kicks ass.
Dan, what a great story, man. And I love just sort of the closing lesson of slowing down. And I think when you're not optimizing for a big exit to private equity, it makes it easier to slow down and just enjoy the process of building a company. But
yeah, and there's no right or wrong. Like,
Sure.
like for those companies that I work with, some of them have exited and some of them are trying to exit. But I think a lot of those guys, and gals, they look at me and they, and they breathe deep. They're like, oh, there is another option.
Yeah.
I don't have to sell this thing.
So cool. Well, as we move to BPC, I just wanted to reinforce something that you just said, which is that Irwin fleece shirt that you're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, never in Second Nature history until today, Lutzi, have I actually purchased a product during the recording of the
Oh, no shit.
And I ordered it before you even name checked it here on the podcast. I ordered the Irwin fleece shirt that you're wearing. So that's not my BPC contribution today, but to the audience here, you do look swagged up. That thing
Thank
looks
you.
sweet. It is like the button up brown color fleece sort of shirt jacket. I'm really looking forward to having that myself. It's squarely in Debo style category here. So using that as our transition, Dan, BPC, brand product content, our closing segment here where we ask our guests to share a brand product or content that they have used or seen recently that has in some way inspired them. What's your contribution today?
Man, I've always been a fan and, friends with Moment skis. But the other night I was at a friend's 40th birthday party, Mike Rogie, who runs the Mountain Gazette, and he's good friends with Luke Jacobson, and Luke and I got to kind of rekindle our friendship. And then, and I'm just always so impressed with, with other businesses, especially, like Luke is kind of this mad scientist that has built his own factory in Reno and does so much good stuff. And he reflects the modern skier and the modern ski community, which for a long time, especially for those brands that were more free ski than free ride, I feel like they were super center mounted and they didn't really represent me, the older guard, the former ski racer that, that can't ski at -5 from center. And I got sucked into their website, and the new Countach 110 is my new ski that I can't wait to try out. So Luke and I have a little trade going. I'll get him dressed in all black, and I'll get a bright orange Countach 110 with a cast system on it. And that, when you ski at Alpine Meadows or Palisades South, we're inbounds, out of bounds with an open gate policy. And I never know if I'm going to be sidestepping, or I know I'm going to be sidestepping. I don't know if I'm going to be skinning or not. So that setup is going to be my daily driver all year.
Awesome.
So cool. And Rogie is a former guest of the podcast here too. We're big admirers of Mountain Gazette too. So Lutzi, you go next.
I'm just going to add a few letters onto Dan's then, because I have an unreleased product, but by the time this podcast comes out, it's going to be out.
Okay.
Momentous. I got the thing right here. Momentous actually just came out with these creatine shoes. So you can actually get like this little chew right here to get your creatine.
You said shoes. I was like,
no, you
can get a creatine chew. I'm down with that.
It's like a sweet tart kind of. It's got this like lemon lime flavor to it. Actually, really good. I've been obviously on the creatine program for a long time, but I have to mix it in stuff and I got to find stuff to mix it into. And now to actually be able to just have like a little bucket of, they're like delicious little sweet tart treats throughout the day. It's pretty handy. So these are coming out not too long from recording this, and by the time this comes out, they will be out. But I got a little preview of the creatine shoes from Momentous. 10 for 10.
Nice. Creatine.
Dude.
Three aging dads here talking about our.
Well, that's just it. But like I know that you're, like that it's working because you can see our Adam's apples. All right, guys.
Yes.
Like
There you go.
All right, cool. I'll close this down here. Guys, my older brother got married this past weekend, 2 days ago. You can
Mazel
probably
tov.
still hear and see the fatigue in my voice and body. It was absolutely cosmic weekend here celebrating, my big brother. And he is a very interesting person, but one of the things that makes him who he is his amazing taste in men's fashion. He's always on the vanguard of what's cool and hot. He's both like a hippie and also, quite sophisticated in his taste. And on Friday night, I was under strict instructions that I had to get a new suit for not the wedding itself, but for the rehearsal dinner thing. And I basically defaulted to his recommendation, which was from a brand called Todd Snyder, which I guess is kind of a popular brand. And the suit that I bought was the relaxed Italian flannel Madison suit from Todd Snyder. Again, Jason was like, you should get something like this. So I bought exactly what he recommended. And I got to say, I got a lot of compliments on my look. It's about $1,000. So it's definitely one of those like very rare purchases for me in terms of, what I'm not utilizing this type of, outfit very often, but it was time for me to get a new suit. And for your brother's wedding, it's the right occasion to get a new suit. And it was the one that he recommended. So I want to recommend it here because Jason has great taste. If anybody's in the market for a new suit, the relaxed Italian flannel Madison suit from Todd Snyder. I was swagged up on Friday night, boys. And this is definitely a non-traditional recommendation for our BPC segment, but I felt inspired to share it this week.
Right on.
Dan, you're the man, dude. Congratulations on 20 years of FlyLow. I want to check that book out and go deeper on the story, but it's great to scratch the surface with you here. We appreciate you sharing your insights.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It's fun to listen to what you guys are doing. So keep up the good work.
Cheers.